Today on the podcast, I have Saket Jain join me for a meaningful conversation about building balance, wealth, and freedom in all facets of your life. Saket is a best-selling author, investor, philanthropist. He's the founder and CEO of Impact Wealth Builders, where he helps people achieve financial freedom through real estate. He loves time with his wife of 19 years and his 2 daughters. He has a very interesting story and a very big mission. We talk about making decisions and the choice to move forward with those decisions and make them right. We talk about laying foundation in your life and having pillars to help guide your choices, time and investments. Saket generously shares so many nuggets of wisdom. I really enjoyed this conversation, and I think you will too. I'm Carla Reeves, and this is Differently, the Lifepreneur podcast. I'm a hyperachiever turned lifepreneur, and after a decade of coaching ambitious leaders, I'm convinced we are far closer than we realize to what we deeply desire, and it's a willingness to do differently that can change everything. This podcast is for the everyday leader ambitious for a rich, out-of-the-box life. This is your weekly nudge and reminder to take a risk to build a life that is uniquely bold, authentic, and in alignment with your deepest values. Hey, Saket, welcome to Differently. I'm really excited to have this conversation with you.
Well, same here, Carla. I have to say I love your company's name, Differently. It is so innovative. I love that. Every time I hear it, it brings a smile to my face. I'm like, I need to do things differently. I love it.
There's magic in that. I love it too. So, Saket, let's just start with, I would love for my listeners to just get a sense of who you are and where you are in your life today. What season or chapter are you in? And then we'll kind of take people back.
Yeah, definitely. So right now, I run a company called, the name of the company is Impact Wealth Builders. First of all, thanks for having me. I want to say hello to your listeners. Thanks for tuning in. It's a great show. Hopefully I can add value to your life. So now going back to my story, my company is Impact Wealth Builders. And Carla, you and I have talked about my story. But really it started with the genesis of life's too short and everyone's balancing multiple things, including me. And through several events over the last several years, I got on a path to find what is my purpose in life, while not sacrificing the financial motives that I want to live by too. Right? I wanted to always strike a balance between the material world, which is also important, because I have lived a life where we gave up everything and moved into a monastery, kind of figured out what that life is. So when we came back out of it, there's probably a fine balance between the two. And that's really what our company Impact Wealth Builders is now. We essentially help people gain their time back through passive investments in our opportunities, which could be real estate, as in multifamily apartment buildings. It could be crypto mining. It could be anything that's not related to the financial world. We are able to, as long as it fits in within our criteria, we're able to offer that to our investors. And the only decision they have to make, or only role they have to play, is make a decision to invest. After that, it becomes pretty passive. And that's really what I like for my own investments. And that's why we're not offering it to others, with a slight twist that we redirect our profits to giving education to kids in India. And India is where I came from. It's really not that that's the only country where there's a need. There's need everywhere. But that's the need I'm very familiar with, and it's very close to my heart. So that's where we redirect our profits to giving education to kids.
Okay, so I can't help but want to go back to the monastery. And
okay.
I love the story behind the business. I know everyone's got a story, and there's something that like drives you and fills your heart up. And so I have to believe that there's something about that time. Like, take us back to a couple of the catalysts that propelled you into the moment you're in today with your business and what you're building in your life.
I think that's where the foundation of the business got built. Now, I think I wasn't aware of that foundation until recently. So we'll talk about both the times so that the audience can connect the two dots, right? So back in 2008, me and my wife, we didn't have kids at that time. Now we have two beautiful girls, 7 and 9. Back in 2008, we were trying to figure out what is our purpose in life. Right? And really, we were in the fork of the roads where do we want to continue making the money that we were doing? We were both highly paid professionals. Do we want to continue make the money and donate our money to different causes, or do we donate our time? Right. There were two debates, internal debates, and between me and my wife, we were constantly going back and forth for several years. I think one day we just woke up in 2008. We're like, you know what? Everyone gives some money. Money is easy, to get as long as the cause is great. It's very hard to find, two accomplished people in our life, in our mind, whatever accomplishment meant for us, to essentially give us time, right? Give their skills back to the community so we can uplift the entire community. So what we did was we were at part of a nonprofit back then as a part-time. We essentially moved into the monastery. It's actually an ashram because most people may not be aware of what an ashram is. It's essentially a monastery, but a different setting. But I think for your listeners, we'll just call it a monastery for now. We moved into a monastery setting where we were essentially living with the monks. Right. My wife was going to become a yoga teacher and I was doing whatever I could. We were kind of living a life where we were now also being very close to the grassroots issues that day-to-day people face, right? Kind of like education, food, water, health, basic necessities. And that's really what got us there. We didn't realize that's what we're going to get. That's what we'll get out of there. Well, that's what drew us there. But through certain events, my dad got diagnosed with cancer. My wife's health started to deteriorate pretty bad for a variety of reasons. And my dad wouldn't take my money. They're like, oh, you're volunteering your whole life. I won't take your money. That's when it really hit me that while our choices are just ours, they may seem they're just ours, there's a whole ecosystem that all of us has created that everyone gets affected by that choice, right? Well, how much right that choice may feel. There's a second, third degree, fourth degree, removed, somebody's getting impacted. And for me, it was my dad. And with my wife. So I'm like, you know what? The foundation can help my wife. But then we're basically saying, Carla, you donated $1,000 to charity. Half of that, 5% of that, 10% is going to go to Saket's health fund, which didn't sit well with us either. They're like, you know what? That they didn't donate the money to support us. They donated the money to support a cause. So while we have the ability to return back and make money, that's what we chose at that point. And now connecting that, then I got lost, right? Then I got lost for several years in making money and all that good stuff. Then back in, life has a way of doing things to you. Several incidents happen, but connecting the two stories of where we are now, last year, I lost about 5 members in my family. 3 of my uncles, my sister, who was 2 years older than me, and my mom. Right? Within the span of 9 to 10 months. And then in January of earlier this year, I got hit pretty bad with COVID. I was almost gone. Then I recovered through that. Then my brother had a heart attack back in India. So it's a series of events. And I think I never reflected back because there were so many of those, one after the other. In one way, now I'm thankful that life didn't give me a break because if I recovered from one of that loss, I probably would have gone back to my normal life, right? Kind of doing what I was doing, making whatever I was making. But there was a time, that's the time where me and my wife kind of sat down again. We were like, what do we really want to do? And the whole passion back in 2008 came back. You know what? Let's make sure that we have the means, enough means to survive and to thrive, but then redirect everything else into uplifting the community. So we built a whole investment company now where we're saying like, just because we believe in a cause, Carla, you don't have to believe in that cause, but I'm pretty sure you and your audience believe in humanity. So we're saying that, Carla, what we're going to say is that we don't know your life situation that well. So we don't say that donate $1,000 or $10 or $5 because we have no idea what your financial responsibilities are. So we don't want to put that burden on you. However, we know our situation. We can put that burden on us. So what we do is when you invest with us and whatever profits we make, a portion of that profit goes into supporting these causes. So you're indirectly impacting without really sacrificing anything that's in your life, right? Your financial returns are your financial returns. That's our first priority, to make sure that if somebody's investing, we're giving them what we projected them to return. Now, there's no promise. Of course, there's a lot of risk in the investments, right? So I don't want to come across saying, if I gave you 2%, you're going to get 2.3%. It fluctuates, but that's a projected number. But really the goal for us is investment is a way to do good. And you can actually do both together, right? You can make money and do good. They don't have to be either or. The life that we chose in 2008 was an either or. And it may not be sustainable for everyone. Right? That's a different choice. And if somebody wants to make that choice and want to have a conversation with me, I'm more than happy to do that. But it's not a path for every single person, especially when you have kids and all. That changes. So that's really what my story is, Carla. I want to make it interactive, but I can go on for another 30 minutes. So I'll make it interactive and give it back to you.
Yeah, I can see your heart in that. And wow, you've navigated a lot of things, a lot of challenges, a lot of loss, a lot of departure in your life. And it's, it made me think of, when you said that fork in the road. And I think that that's something that we, my listeners, that we all relate to. Like, there are so many forks in the road. And just this week I was having a conversation with a client, and actually a couple conversations in the last few weeks. And it's about, where they get in this moment where they're just kind of paralyzed by this fork in the road and this, doing the right thing, picking the right thing, and figuring it out right now to just make that right choice. And then they just get paralyzed and they can't move. And I'm curious, in the forks in your road, what has helped you in those moments of choice? What has kind of grounded you to get clear or take that next step?
It's really, Carla, for us, and I tell that to everyone. I think it's, you don't make a right decision. You make a decision and make it right. And that's really it. Sorry, go ahead, Carla.
I think
you're saying.
Say that again, please.
You don't make the right decision. You make a decision and make it right, whatever the decision is. Because what happens on the flip side of that, let's just say, as a thought experiment, that why most of us get paralyzed to make a decision. I have a theory, and I could be wrong. I'm not a psychologist, but I have a theory that it's because we want to make the best decision at that time. Not understanding intellectually, we know that, experientially, not really thinking that we have no control on the next millisecond. Forget about next 5 years or 10 years or 15 years, right? So I think the way I have now started living my life, and both me and my wife about it, is let's figure out what decision makes sense, knowing whatever we know at that point, because we don't know what the future is. We're not going to worry about making the right decision. We're going to make a decision within certain parameters, right? So our pillars are very strong. Our foundation of how we want to live our life is very, very strong. We're very clear about who we are. Now, beyond that, whatever decision comes up, if 3 decisions fit in all the boxes, then we just have to pick one, right? As long as it's not denying or negating one of our core foundation principles, we're okay making a decision. Especially, most of the decisions are reversible. You make a decision, and then within 5 months, if it doesn't work out, you can scale back. I'll give you a great example for that. My own example. We recently moved from DC to Raleigh, right? We pondered a lot on, is it the right decision? Is it the right decision? Is it the right decision? And I think one day me and my wife woke up. We're like, you know what? If we hate it, we'll come back. It just calmed everything down. You have a way to get back. Now, I'm not saying jump off of the bridge, because that decision is not reversible. So you have to kind of gauge in what reversibility and what's the impact means to you. But I think it's really more about most decisions in life are reversible. But we, as decision makers, get paralyzed because we're trying to make the right one. And there's no right one.
There's no such thing.
It's the right one at that time, maybe. But there's no right or wrong. Like my 2008 decision to move to a monastery, there's no logical explanation for that decision, Carla. Like, people just ask me, why did you? I'm like, you know what? It's probably one of the most illogical decision and the best decision of my life. If I had to put logic into it, I wouldn't have done it.
It's so true. Oh my gosh, there's so much here. I it really is about choice and perspective and choosing what it is. You know, even you think about just marriage, right? Like a lot of people get into marriage and then they're trying to figure out, are they the one or are they not the one, or is this right? And you can make it right. You can choose it fully. And then that gives you a whole bunch of other doors to go through once you just choose it, right? And it's the same thing with any decisions that we're making in life. And I mean, I'm guilty too. You can take it so seriously and get so significant about it. And one of the greatest, one of the greatest coaches in my life, he would say, go to the worst case scenario, just like you did, like, okay, so it doesn't work out. So I fall flat on my face. Then what? See yourself kind of rebounding from that and then move forward. It's not as serious as we make it.
No, it's not. It's not. And life's too short, right? Now, maybe at some point we'll live to 150, but let's just say even 150. In the grand scheme of 150 is not a lot of life. It's a very short life. Now we could live it worrying and kind of making things right and all that stuff. And I'm guilty of that too. I'm not perfect. Don't get me wrong. I have my own moments up and down. But really, I think it's the core philosophy is life's too short. We got to do what we like to do, right? Because that's the one thing we have to do. Like I just few weeks ago, somebody I knew, who is now 52 years old, passed away, right? And what happened was a few weeks ago, he had told a very good friend of mine, I'm done making money. I want to now enjoy my life. There's no then enjoy the life, right? There's no if and then. There's now and now, right? So there's a balance to that, of course, right? Because we all have families, responsibilities. So I'm not just saying give up everything today. If you hate your job, give it up. If you hate your business, give it up. That's not the messaging I'm saying. What I'm saying is worry has a perspective. Stress has a perspective. And if you take things in perspective, you may be able to navigate your stress in a more effective way rather than feel like a downward spiral where everything is just getting sucked out of you.
You're talking my language. One of my greatest passions and kind of the heart behind my mission is to help people to stop putting life off to someday, right? Because someday may not come, just like you're describing. Yeah. And so tell us, like, you are obviously very driven. You're building a lot of things in your life, both personally and professionally. And it's also, it sounds like you are very clear about those pillars. And I do that a lot with my clients' work. It's like, you got to know what those pillars are so that you can then kind of align your thinking and your actions today with those. But how do you juggle that and keep those priorities, in alignment for yourself as you're doing really big moves in your business?
Yes, I think one, and I can't remember. I'm pretty sure it's not my original thought. So I won't take the credit for this thought, but I can't remember where I heard it. The work-life balance concept of everything has to be in balance, I think it's taken out of perspective, right?
100%.
Yes.
Keep going.
So it's really, you take every day and you try to do your best. Someday your work's going to take 100% out of you. But if that happens every single day, we have a problem, right? But if the next day you give 100% to the family, and it's not 50-50. I'm not saying that you take one Monday, just go work, right, take Tuesday off and only do family. That's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is you have to make sure that everything is in balance, not in terms of quantity, but quality. Right. And that's the most important pillar that you can have. Because I think part of that struggle is everyone's, including me, including you, like most of your audience is very driven. They're trying to establish something in the work life. And unfortunately, with a hope that when they accomplish something, they're going to be able to dedicate time to the family. Like I had a manager way back when he was basically telling me, I want to make all the money I want to make till my kids are 13. And then I want to spend time with them. I just asked them one simple question. What if they don't want to spend time with you at that time? You know for sure now they want to spend time with you because they're looking up to you. You know for sure. 13, I have no idea and you don't have any idea. And and of course, not to make it too morbid, What's the guarantee you'll live till they're 13, right? What's the guarantee you'll have your health till 13? There's no guarantees in life, right? So, but if you bring the balance or seminal balance between the work and life, between your health, right? Kind of like, I read a pillar again. These are nothing that I say is original. So I don't want to take credit for anything. I think I've definitely heard it somewhere else that the first pillar that you have to do is your own health. And I am guilty of that, right? Because that's the easiest one to forget. The health is the most important pillar that you need to have. Then your mind, then your spirit, and then come finance. So you want to make sure that your whatever is your foundation, and I said it wrong. I would not call them pillars, because when it goes into pillar, that everything is the same level of importance. If you actually build a pyramid model and you force rank it at what's my base foundation, if you have all the wealth but you don't have the good body and you're bedridden, is that what you want? But on the flip side of that, you have a perfect athletic body but you have no money. Is that the life you want, right? These are contradictions that we have to ask ourselves to make sure that we come to our own understanding of what does our pyramid look like? What does our pillars look like? And I think both me and my wife, we've been married for 19 years now. We have our own struggles, but I think we constantly ask ourselves, what is priority today? Where do we want to go next? And one thing hasn't changed in the last 19 years is our connection with grassroots problems in the world, right? That has not changed. Now our ability to influence and impact has changed depending upon where we are in our life. But our heart speaks to that cause a lot. So we always know if we lose our compass, we'll come back to that cause. And whatever we're doing in our life, if it's helping that cause, at that moment, that's the best decision.
You know, in that hierarchy, right, that you're talking about, or that pyramid, it may look a little bit different for everybody, but it makes me think back to a time in my life where, like, I thought I was doing all the right things to build and create the life that I wanted, but there were some blind spots, and I thought I was building this extraordinary marriage, and I thought I was spending my time appropriately. But when I had somebody in my life actually tell me to go back and track my time, I realized that my marriage was getting the breadcrumbs of my time. Right. And that at the time I was saying my faith was really important, and it was getting the breadcrumbs of my time. And I readjusted that hierarchy, just like you're saying, to adjust the quality so that it was getting the quality of my energy, my faith, and my relationship. And that was a game changer. And so for everybody listening, getting clear about what those are for you, and then looking to see, you know, how is your time and your money even, right, lining up with that hierarchy in your life can be a real game changer. So tell us how, with your expertise, like, how can our financial life be a vehicle for all the things that we're talking about? Because I think for a lot of people, and for myself, for a lot of my life, my finances, they just kind of got done, and they kind of sat there, but I didn't pay a lot of attention to it. And putting more attention there and getting more knowledge around that, can also be a life-changing, shift that you make. So give us some of your, wisdom around how we might be thinking differently about this, or I'll just look to you to guide us.
Yes, I think one thing I realized, Carla, is people are not after money, right? Nobody wants to be rich, but people want to be free. And that's a very interesting perspective. When you start actually living your life with that perspective, I'm not saying you'll be rich or not rich. That's a very different conversation. But if we're after freeing our time, freedom, right? If we're after freedom, there are different dimensions of freedom, right? There's freedom of time, freedom of money, freedom of place, like different dimensions of freedoms. And you can probably come up with another 5 or 10 of those for yourselves. But let's attack one thing, which is time. If we all agree that all of us are going to have an expiration date, we just don't know. It may be days, months, years, decades, centuries. Who knows, right? We all don't know. Every one of us is a ticking time bomb, just waiting to explode. If that statement is true and you really believe in that, the most crucial element that you have is time, because you're not getting back that. And if that statement is true, the next logical question really is, how do you gain your time back? Right? And I think you said something about time tracking. Time tracking is a great way. I'm always afraid of tracking my time because I know I'm wasting it. Right? and sometimes not knowing it is better than knowing it, because it may put you in a different state, right? So, but I think we're all are guilty of that. No one's perfect. But we're having this conversation. So I think it's more about making sure that you're trying to get your time back. So let's talk a simple thing, right? So there are several things in everyone's life that can be delegated, which essentially when I say delegated, I'm not saying just hand off to somebody and disappear. Right? There's an art to delegation, and we can have a different conversation on that as well. But everyone in our life, if you're doing your own grocery, that can be delegated. Let's forget about business for a second. Let's talk about life. If you're cleaning your own house, that can be delegated. If you're mowing your own lawn, no matter how relaxing it is for people, because I can't understand it. I hate mowing. Some people tell me it's very relaxing. Maybe it is, but it's taking time, right? So if you're after gaining time back, you have to really look at your life as in what aspects of your life can you outsource to somebody else, not because it's menial, is because somebody else enjoys doing it. That's how they want to make their money. And that's okay. You have to respect that. So it's not about you being above somebody else, but it's more about, is your time more valuable than $40 an hour? So one thing that I would invite all your listeners to do is don't think about hours in terms of this is only going to take me 40 minutes. Think about it as how much money could I have made in that 45 minutes? Right? If you just change that perspective, it changes. I mean, the same thing with the spending. If you're making $10 an hour and you're buying a $15,000 TV, a $1,500 TV, or $500 TV, how many hours do you have to work to get that TV, right? I think it's just one of those two ways. If you start looking at it, your income and expenses and your time are probably going to come to a balance point, right? Now, I'm not saying everyone has or should delegate everything. That's a very personal choice. Like we just hired a virtual assistant just for our personal life because we're realizing there's so much going on, so much research, so much follow-ups that we need to do that if both, my wife's name is Tejal, both Tejal and I can free up our time, we can actually do something constructive, or if nothing else, we can spend time with each other, right? And that's very valuable to us. But if we're always thinking about something else that somebody else is willing to take away because that's what they enjoy doing, that gives us time back, right? So I think finance, to your earlier question, to answer it directly, it's really all about money is a means. Money is not the measure of your identity, right? What is your relationship with the money? Because all of us grew up differently, right? Some grew up in very humble backgrounds. Some grew up in money doesn't grow on trees. Some grew up with ton of money being handed over to them. What is your relationship with the money? That's first question, knowing where the foundation is. What do you want your relationship with the money to be? And then figure out how you're going to bridge that gap. Because if you're not honest about the first question, what is your relationship with the money? And I want you to be as honest as possible with yourself, because you don't have to tell that answer to anybody, right? That's a perfect way of answering any question. This is for you to know. And you just got to ask, is that a healthy relationship? Because a friend of mine he sold a company, he just got $25-30 million. And I asked him one question, he's like, well, I'm so afraid I'm going to lose it all. So his relationship with money is fear driven. Then I have another friend who's worth $40-50 million, his net worth. I'm like, what happens if you lose it all? He's like, I'll make it back up. It's a very different conversation. Their net worth wasn't important, but their answer was very important to me, right? That one's thinking I'm going to lose it all because he thought he got lucky. The other one is saying, so what if I lose it all? I can make it back and I'm going to make it 10 times faster because I actually know how to do it, right? It's a very different way of thinking, but it's their relationship with the money.
So powerful to think about, just those beliefs and your mindset and your perspective, like the lens that you're looking through as you're making choices around your money is so, just spending a little bit of time to understand what that is. And like you said, what do you want that relationship to be? And then how do you bridge that gap? Such a powerful question. And could be applied to your time too. What's your relationship to time? A lot of people live in, deficit of time, fear of lack of time, and that really dictates their experience of time. And it's the same thing with money, is what you're saying.
I think it's actually, since you say that, I was thinking about it. I think it actually applies in every single dimension. Health, spirituality, your money, or anything. You can say, where are you now? What's your relationship with your universal energy today? Could it be God? It could be whatever you believe in or not believe in. Is that its optimum capacity today? If it is, great, continue doing that. But if you want to increase it or decrease it, figure out a way how to do it. But be honest about it, right? Don't fool yourself.
That's so true. The truth really does set you free.
It does. It hurts you too. Freedom. It does hurt you. The first feeling is always hurt. What am I doing? But the next step is freedom, because now you have acknowledged it.
That's so true. So how can money, you say money is a means, and so how can we look to use that as a vehicle? Like inside of the work you're doing with clients and in your business today, how do you help people use their money as a vehicle for impacting and, purpose-driven efforts and also freedom in your life?
Yeah. So I think part of that is we only work with investors who want to impact life, who want to have an impact bigger than themselves, right? If somebody is just trying to become a billionaire, that's not a right client for us. We actually don't work with, we do a lot of upfront work to make sure that there is a perfect fit, because what our goal is to build a community, not an investor base, right? There's a huge difference between the two. We want to build a thriving community of investors who actually find solace in meeting people like yourselves, Carla, right? Their heart's pure. They want to give, they want to add value, but they also want to make money, right? Not in that priority, but essentially there's a balance between the two. So what we essentially do is, if you've always wanted to add value, in other human beings' lives, more importantly, folks that do not necessarily have the resources, right? What we basically are saying is we're building the next generation of wealth builders. That's really our go-to mantra for everything that we do. That, Carla, you have kids, we have kids, your listeners have kids, right? So we need to be financially free. We, of course, all of us want to do well for our kids. We want our kids to be financially free, or at least help them understand what that means and set them on a path. So we're not going to be able to do that for our kids if we actually don't change our thinking and our mindset to actually set ourselves on that path. So we get to that point. But there's a huge population where they don't even know where the next meal is going to come from, right? I can't go to them and say, hey, do you want to build wealth? They're like, are you crazy? I don't even know where my food's going to come from. I don't even know where my clothes are going to come from. If I can get that, I'm wealthy, right? So what I found in my life is I grew up in a very humble beginning. I tell that story a lot. My dad didn't even have money, or his parents didn't even have money to buy underwear for the kids. They would wear hand-me-down underwears, right? So I grew up in a very different world, and I'm thankful for that. I'm pretty sure I laughed when he told me that story at that time when I was a kid. When he told me that story, I'm sure it was funny at that time. But reflecting on that, what they did, one thing I'm very thankful for my mom and dad is they put a lot into my education, right? They sent me to the best schools. They wanted me to do I went to the best engineering school in India. I went to the best, one of the best MBA schools here at Columbia. I went to the best work for the best companies. I always worked best. Now, somewhere that got lost, right? Where best became the only goal. But if I reflect back, it's education that got me there. It was not only my hard work. It's the ability to afford that education, that they were aware that if we can we'll give them this, and that, he or she will excel, right? So they were able to give that to me. What we're trying to do is now we're trying to give that to other kids. And again, we happen to pick India because both me and my wife are from India. That does not mean, I want to be very clear, India is not the only place we can find that help in the US as well. And wherever your listener base is, I'm sure their local community needs that help, right? So now we're saying is, let's make our single motive is how can we build the next generation of wealth builders? It could be local to you. It could be international. It could be wherever you want it to be. It doesn't matter. It could be any cause you want it to be, as long as we're enabling them to break out of their current situation, which we all agree they're not an ideal situation for most of us or for anyone, for helping them break out to at least ask the question, I want to be wealthy. And also wealthy for us is not just money. Right? We're looking at wealth is very holistic. Now, we're very, very careful in using that term because I think that term is being misinterpreted. Money does not mean wealth, for me at least. Money is money, right? It's a very transactional thing. We all know that. But wealth is really about health, right? About whatever your dimensions in life are, whatever could it be, are you wealthy in every single dimension? Money just happened to be one of the several dimensions. So it needs to be there. That's really where we think our investor base, we essentially help them to connect with themselves first, right? What's the music they like to listen to? When I say music, not the radio, but kind of like the impact music, right? What is that music for them? Is it even there? Or they're just kind of hiding it. It's there, but it's dug so deep. Most of my investors hate me because I never give them answers. I only give them questions. It's most questions, right? Because that's, I think, the best growth you can have is tons of questions. Because if somebody gives you an answer, it's their answer. It's not your answer. You have to come up with your own answer.
A lot of times with clients, it's, I often find that they're asking questions, but they're asking the wrong questions, right? And you can ask different questions that suddenly create mobility and just open doors that weren't there before. Sometimes we just get locked in trying to figure out a certain question. It's just not the right question. Questions so powerful. So tell us, if somebody's listening and they're curious about what you do, how would they know that the next step would be to reach out to you, and what would that look like?
Yeah, definitely. So my website, Impact Wealth Builders, is the best way to get in touch with me. It has the information. We're still building it, so it's growing because we just conceptualized this business a few months ago. We're still doing what we were doing before. It was a completely different branding, so we're rebranding it. The website's under construction. So it'll eventually be the source where everyone can find all the information. But there's a specific section there. I just wrote a best-selling book, a co-authored a best-selling book called Think Big. You do not have to buy it. If you want to buy it, up to you, but you do not have to buy it. I'll send you that book for free. What I ask in return is schedule a call with me. Right? Once you schedule a call with me, let me understand. Let me try and help you. And it's not a bait and switch. I'm not selling anything to anybody. Because I don't, right? It's more, if people want to work with me, they'll come back to me for what we have. And it's not like I have a product that can say that if you take a call with me, run to the back offer, it only alive for next 24 hours, you get 25% discount. I don't do any of that. It's when the opportunity comes. If it's the right opportunity, then you can come in and be with us, and let's make our dent in the universe, however small it may be.
And did you state your website?
Yes, it's if I did not, Impact Wealth Builders, that's plural, builders.com. And of course, I'm also on LinkedIn. I'm launching a podcast as of October 15th. So depending upon when this one gets released, and Carla, I know you and I have a time scheduled to get you on there. I would love to hear your story.
So excited.
So I think once that gets launched, there's really a lot of different places where you can find me. But the best way would be impactwealthbuilders.com. So schedule a call with me, join our investor club, and we would love to stay connected.
I mean, your podcast will be Impact Wealth Builders also, is that
so
right?
It'll be called Migrate to Wealth, right? And
Okay, good.
And that's a whole different reason, right? So I think migrate, and the most important word I tell everyone is not wealth. It's just a catchy phrase to be there. It's really migrate. Migrate is, how are you going to intentionally migrate, intentionally transform yourself? What is your journey? And wealth happens to be a medium where the first connection is money, that this show is about making you money. It's not. It's really about making you wealthy, right? And get in the right mindset. And Carla, I know your work, you believe in that wholeheartedly, that it's really about 80 to 90% is mindset. Whatever you want to do with your life. It's not the mechanics. The mechanics is 10%, 15%, 20%, depending on what you do. But most of that is in the mindset. So that our goal with that show is how can we change somebody's limited beliefs through inspirational stories like yourselves, Carla.
So beautiful. And I think you've made that so clear that wealth is so much bigger and broader. And it's really about creating wealth in all those domains of your life that are important to you. So good. We could probably go on for hours.
We can. We sure can.
But we're going to do this again on your podcast.
Yes.
So we'll continue that there. So my last question for you is, what does differently mean to you?
What does differently mean to you? Actually, differently is very close for me to the word migrate, right? Because, and I'm not promoting my podcast because that's not the goal, but it really is. It struck when I heard the name first time to somebody that you and I both know common. When she said that word, I'm like, that word basically means whatever you're doing in your life today, you're doing it differently tomorrow, right? Which is very close to what the word migrate means to me is wherever you're in your life today, it does not mean it good or bad. Tomorrow, how can you intentionally create a different future by doing things differently, right? That's really what it means to me. And that's why I love the name, because I'm like, that's the mission of your company and my company. It's essentially the same. Help migrate people, help transform people with an intention behind it. And let's help them get there.
Incredible. So great. What a lovely conversation. Thank you so much for joining me, and I can't wait to join you on your podcast.
Thank you, Carla, again, and thank you for listeners for tuning in. This is the best show. Thank you.
Thank you for tuning in to this episode of Differently. I hope it stirred your thinking, and I invite you to take one inspired action from something that stood out to you. If you want to hear more conversations like this, hit follow on your favorite podcast app. And if this episode could impact someone you know, please share it and pass it along. Remember, new episodes drop weekly. See you next week.